I would have made more money if I...
Last week there was an event like this in Hollywood with Leonard Nimoy talking about Star Trek IV, but on Star Trek III, which was his first film as a director, he said that Paramount in the studio was very hands-on, and to the point where when they asked him to do IV, he said, "I won't do it unless you kind of lay off and let me make the movie I want to make." For Star Trek II, what was the studio like with you? Did you feel that kind of pressure, or they just kind of let you do what you wanted to do?
The studio pretty much left me alone while I was shooting. The cast was pretty much all in place. I mean, even Montalban as the big star was already in place. Kirstie Alley, my discovery. Nothing to be ashamed of. Anyway, they left me alone. They were very happy with the cut that they saw at the end. They wanted a plot point changed. I can't exactly remember what it was, but it was something to where Kirk finds out, or how he finds out about his son. So we did a couple of reshoots. Where it got really good was this is about 5 weeks before we opened. We screened the movie for Barry Diller, who was then the head of the studio. And it was in the administration screening room, and there was Barry Diller and Gary Nardino, who was the head of the television division, and Harv Bennett and me watching the movie. And the movie ended, and Barry Diller looks around and goes, "I didn't know this movie was about the death of Spock. You can't kill Spock." And I'm going, we open it. I mean, how could you be the head of the studio and you greenlit the picture? I didn't say that. And then he said, "And I'll tell you something else. That scene between Kirk and his son, that doesn't work." And I said, "In your opinion?" And he said, "Look, I can say this to you politely, or I can just let you have it. If that was my father, I'd want to know where the fuck he'd been all my life." And I said, "Well, here's where I come out." And I'm trying to keep my lunch in my stomach. It's the second movie I've ever, and I can hear the waves going out. This guy is trouble, don't work with him, he'll never be hired again anywhere. And I said, here's where I come out. I shot the screenplay that we all agreed that was going to be shot. You guys asked for some recuts, and I did them. You asked for some reshoots, and I did them. But I've done all the reshooting and all the recutting that I'm going to do. And if you change a frame of this movie, I will be out with a sandwich board in front of the movie theater in Westwood picketing this film. And if that's the kind of creative atmosphere that you think will lure other directors to this lot, well, of course, that's your decision. By this time, there's a vein popping out of his forehead. He got up and he said, "Well, it's your fucking movie. If you feel so strong, if you feel so strongly about it, your fucking movie stomped out." And that was the end. So that was the only pressure.
There's another kind of pressure, which is probably something that's grown to a fever pitch these days, with sites like Ain't It Cool News and my site Trek Movie and other geek-friendly sites, where the fandom almost gets obsessively involved in a film as it's being made. Now, while Wrath of Khan was being made, the version of it in those days were the fanzines and the conventions, and there was rumors, but did you feel an inordinate amount of pressure from the fans, especially when the rumors of the death of Spock started getting around? And did that at all make any influence on you while you were making the film?
I once got a letter that said, "If Spock dies, you die."
just want to say I'm really sorry about that. I got open.
People said, you can't kill Spock. I said, yes, you can. You can do anything. You just have to do it well. If you do it and it is perceived as being arbitrary or manipulative or as working out a clause in somebody's contract, then people will throw things at the screen and they'll be right to do it. I'll wrap this up because I know everybody wants to see the movie. But let me just say this, and say two things and leave you with these thoughts. Art is not a democracy. It is a dictatorship. You don't have to read the book. You don't have to look at the movie. You don't have to listen to the piece of music. Interestingly enough, the film that's playing here, the opening scenes of the movie is the opening of The Rite of Spring in 1912, and it caused a riot in the theater, and Stravinsky had to get away and everything. And 50 years later, it's the music for Fantasia. Nobody bats an eye. It's not a democracy. It is an agreement that you make. And somebody has to have a single vision. And I'm not interested in art by committee. The other thing I will say is that the artist's authority, his proprietary authority over his work, ends when the work is finished. Artists are people who put messages in bottles and they throw them out into the world and hope that somebody finds the bottle, pulls out the cork, and is able to decipher what's inside. But we're not going to be there when that happens, looking over their shoulder and saying, oh, this is what this means. You must decide. The artist is not the answer to a book of math equations at the back of the book, where you flip and whatever he says goes. Whatever I say has no meaning here. As warmly as I feel, I'm grateful that this is a wonderful movie, and I believe it is a wonderful movie, and I'm glad I got to do it. But whatever is made of it is what you will make of it. Not anything that I can say can either add to or detract from it, or should. If I tell you that the real reason that something happened is something, it's not valid. The only thing that is valid is what happens in your minds and your hearts as you experience a work of art. The artist is superfluous in the process. I think we should stop, because it's past my bedtime.
There's just one question. I got a lot of emails, and everyone says you got to ask them this, so I'm going to ask you one quickie. If it turns out J.J. Abrams can't direct the next Star Trek movie, would you be interested?
It depends on the script.